questions. So welcome again. And this is the third event in the series of 6 special events, which are called Born to Flourish. And this is a series of talks where we discuss how modern science and Buddhist ancient wisdom merge together to help us live healthy lives in healthy relations with ourselves and the world. And after this series and if you want to stay connected, you can already sign up for the mail list where you can get all the updates about books and other news from our speakers, as well as news from the Center for Healthy Minds, and also the news from the NGO Healthy Minds Innovations. So please, you can choose either all of these mailing lists or one, and this form is accessible also under the resources button on Zoom and in the description to YouTube in the description to the event on YouTube. And now I would like to introduce and welcome our dearest speakers, Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, world-renowned teacher of meditation and founder of the head of Tergar meditation community, as well as Dr. Cortland Dahl, who is also a great meditator, teacher of meditation, as well as scientist, and Dr. Richard Davidson, who is famous scientist as well as meditation practitioner. And yes, now hand over to you, Court.
Thank you so much, Dinara. And thank you, everybody joining from around the world. It's amazing. I think we have 5,000 people signed up from countless countries around the world. So thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are going to be discussing emotions and emotional imbalance, which is something I think so many of us have experienced in our lives, whether directly or through people we care about. And if you weren't here for the first few sessions, just to mention that these discussions are an ongoing conversation that Rinpoche and Richie and I have had for a few years, and that we are using as the basis for a new book that we are writing together. So we thought that we are already having these discussions. It might be fun and helpful to others to actually have this discussion in public. So that's basically what we're doing. This is all will eventually result in a new book that we would love to stay connected with you about, as Dinara mentioned. So I thought it'd be good to maybe start with a story. You know, so much of this is simply the human experience, and the human experience we have living in a very complex world in the 21st century. We've heard many stories, really touching stories and inspiring stories from so many people like you around the world. And one of those stories that felt very relevant to our discussion today was from a woman named Emma here in the United States, who is in her early 30s. She's a freelance designer who works from home, as so many people do these days. And she found herself caught in this cycle, which I think is incredibly common. My guess is many of you will be able to relate to this. She found herself waking up every morning and grabbing her phone. The very first thing she did each morning was she would grab her phone and just start scrolling through all of her social media, checking messages. And she noticed at a certain point that she was getting more and more anxious. The things that she was consuming, the kind of information she was taking in, weren't making her feel good. They were setting her on a course for her day that was filled with anxiety and stress and tension. So she would be checking the news, and it just was reminding her that the world seems to be coming apart at the seams, all of the wars, challenges, social division. Then she'd go on social media, she'd check Instagram and other things, and it also seemed like everybody else was living some perfect dream life. And it put her in the state where she felt like she was constantly comparing herself to everybody else and feeling like her own life was a mess while everybody else seemed to be living life to perfection. And then she would end up doing things related to her work. She'd have stressful emails from clients and all sorts of other things that would just be provoking anxiety in her. And this never let up throughout the whole day, and then the next day, and the next day. It just felt like it was this endless cycle where every time she had a free moment, she would grab her phone, and it was filling her mind with anxiety. And it started to feel like she just felt broken, like something had gone horribly off track in her life, and yet she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to get things back into balance. So the closest she could come to that was just to distract herself, to find yet more things to grab her attention. She would binge watch her favorite shows on Netflix and other things like that, but that didn't really help. And she was just sort of stuck. And that's when we actually came into contact and met Emma. So I think her story is pretty universal. I'm sure that everybody is living this to some degree. In this session, what we're going to talk about is specifically the emotional side of this, how we are living in a world that is designed to provoke our reactions, to elicit strong emotions, and to keep us hooked into these things that end up in this toxic loop. And we're going to talk about a different way to live. We're going to talk about a new way to relate to emotions that doesn't ask us to stop feeling what we're feeling, but to relate to them in a different way where we can start finding the peace of mind, the balance that so many of us feel like we're lacking in our lives. So why don't we dive straight in? And I want to move over to you, Richie. I think that Richie, you for years, for decades, have been at the front lines of the scientific research in this area. So, Richie, would love to hear from you, your kind of take on this from a scientific perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much, Court, and thank you to all the Tergar volunteers who are helping to put this on. Uh, One of the most important things to recognize is that these feelings of anxiety and overwhelm that so many of us are experiencing these days is not our fault, so to speak. This is a product of, as we say, many causes and conditions. And one of those causes and conditions is the way our brains are actually structured. All of us have in the front part of our brain this large chunk of real estate that we call the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is larger in humans than it is in other species compared to the rest of the brain mass. And the prefrontal cortex is responsible for many of the characteristics that are uniquely human. And one of those characteristics is our ability to what psychologists say, describe as mental time travel, our ability to think about the future and to reflect on the past. And this capacity to think about the future and reflect on the past obviously confers many advantages and has been critical for our evolutionary success. It also is a capacity that can get us into trouble. And anxiety is very much about thoughts of the future, worries about the future. And depression is largely about rumination about the past. And so, this capacity that we have with our prefrontal cortex to do mental time travel also is something that can ensnare us, that can really hijack us. And the vision that we're going to offer today is one of not getting rid of this amazing capacity that we have, because there are many things that we can creatively harness with these capabilities. But how can we do it in a way that is infused with wisdom, with love, with compassion? So that will be our focus for our time today. And I'll pass it back to you, Court.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richie. So as Richie said, this is what we're going to be talking about today. It's such an important topic. And we're going to explore this quite deeply, showing both the most current cutting edge research, including some research that hasn't even been published yet, and insights from Rinpoche's Buddhist tradition that goes back thousands of years. So before we get into more of the ideas and the new perspectives, we thought it might be good to get a little taste of the experience. So Rinpoche, I wonder if you would be willing to guide us in a short experience so we can just get a taste for what it might look like and feel like to relate to our inner experience, our thoughts, our emotions in a different way. So maybe we'll take a few minutes for a short practice if you would be willing, Rinpoche.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Cortland and Richie. And yes, from the Buddhist tradition, what we call, if we know the secret of our own mind, then looks like a problem for us, like panic, depression, loneliness, and all these destructive emotions can be support for us, can be our friend, our teacher. So when I was young, I had panic attacks. So I learned a lot through my panic attacks. So what I found is normally what we call 3 things that become booster or the causes of the panic attacks. So in our term, what we call singularity, permanent, independent. So singularity normally says almost panic and you become one. It's kind of like panic is part of you. And the permanent says, I will never free from this panic. My life is doomed. So from now on, there's no hope. Then independent says, panic almost has its own identity. So with this together, then I develop panic or panic. So panic or panic is sometimes worse than panic. So now in the traditional technique, so there are so many techniques, what we call, we have variety choice. Of course, I cannot guide everything. So one simple technique is what we call just observe the panic. Just observe the thought and emotion or whatever comes in your mind. So what we call, when you see the river, you're out of river. When you see the mountain, you're out of mountain. So you and panic not automatically become one. There's separation if you see. Not only that, you see pieces, not single, and they're changing, impermanent. In the end, what you see is panic is kind of opinion. Whether listen or not, it's up to you. So let's try to practice this together. So please keep your spine loosely straight. And first, just breathe naturally. Relax muscles in your body. And just let your mind and the body as it is. Meaning, you don't need to look for a special state of mind. No need to get rid of any thought and emotion. Just relax, be here and now. Now, slowly pay attention to the breathing. The breath is coming to your nostrils, breathing in, breathing out. Just simply observe your breath. And while you're observing the breath, there's so many millions of thoughts come and go. It doesn't matter. Let them come, let them go. Now, please slowly focus on the thought or emotion in your mind, just like you're observing your breath. Your breath never stays. It comes and goes. Same in our mind, all this monkey mind, blah, 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 yada, 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 the thought and emotions are just like breathing that are coming and going. And you observe that. Maybe when you try to observe, they disappear, become blank, gap. Wonderful. Stay with the gap. Maybe they are not disappear. You can see them, just like watching television. In fact, 3D television. And just observe the sensation in the body, the image in the mind, the conversation in between the image and the body, the belief. So many pieces there. The anxiety become pieces, the depression become pieces. Whatever thought and emotion become pieces. That image, voice, bodily sensation, and the belief. And continue to observe. They disappear, become gap. They come back again, become like movie, watching inner television. But when you see the inner television, you are not in the television. You are outside. The awareness become bigger than thought and emotion. That awareness is observing thought and emotion. Just like sky and the cloud. Awareness like sky, thought and emotion is like cloud. So, no need to get rid of thought and emotion. No need to create special thought and emotion. Just observe. Let them come, let them go. Now please slowly open your eyes if you close your eyes and rest your mind few seconds as it is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. This is actually a game changer for our emotional lives, what Rinpoche just mentioned. If you take this back to Emma's story that I mentioned earlier, doom scrolling first thing in the morning or doom scrolling as you're lying in bed at night, all the anxiety and stress that just feels like it never ends. This is the simplest thing, but it completely changes the way we relate to those experiences. So if you're Emma, taking a moment when you first open your eyes just to notice what's going on in your mind and your body. It's that simple before you grab your phone. If you do grab your phone and you find yourself, comparing your own life to what you see in social media or getting stressed out about your to-do list, then again, just pausing for a moment, setting the phone down, and again, just bringing awareness to your own inner experience without needing to change it. So again, it's a simple thing. The hardest part is really remembering to do it. But when you do it, it just opens up a totally new inner space, a totally different way to relate to thoughts and emotions. Rinpoche, so much of your approach, which I know I speak for Richie, certainly my own life and many, many people watching here, has just completely changed not only the way we meditate, but our entire lives, especially things like this, how we relate to our own mind, to our own emotions, to impulses and whatnot. It's all based on this ancient Mahamudra tradition where we're really learning to see something in a very unique way about our experience. I wonder if you could just share that perspective on emotions. What is this ancient lineage that you have been taught? How does it teach us to view our lives and our experience a little differently?
Yeah, so in the ancient tradition, especially what we call the Mahamudra tradition, the Great Seal, Mahamudra meaning everything is in the field of that awareness, love and compassion, wisdom. So it's like seal, Great Seal. That's called what we call Mahamudra style. So in the Mahamudra style, that what we believe that everybody has this wonderful nature. So nobody is broken by nature. We all are complete. We all are wholesome. We have this pure nature. So, but at the same time, there is what we call obscuration. So we have what we call this unhealthy sense of self, that clinging, as I mentioned before, permanent, independent, singularity, too tight. Then a lot of kleshas like craving, aversion, panic, depression, so many things appear. So we have this example that if there's a lamp, the candle lamp covered by scary image, and then what happened? The room will be full of scary image, but actually that image coming from the light is the manifestation of the light. But the problem normally, if there is spider image appear in your room, you don't know it's coming from the light. You think it's a real spider. Then it makes a lot of confusion. So the traditional style, what we call poison become medicine, obstacle become opportunity, problem become solution. So we can look at the nature of these kleshas, like traditional what we call 5 kleshas: ignorance, aversion, craving, pride, jealousy. So when you look at the nature of these things, actually there's a lot of wisdom. There's like Richie mentioned about the human has great capacity to think about the future, to reflect the past. So this is why we are unique, right? We have a lot of innovations. We can plan very well in the future. We can learn from past mistakes. Capacity, great capacity for the human. And the Mahamata tradition says same thing. These kleshas has great wisdom, great value in it. But the problem is we don't see these great things with these kleshas, then we are lost. So, for example, when we talk about the 5 kleshas, ignorant. So, of course, ignorance is don't know, confusion, doubt. But when we look at the deeper level, there's what we call non-conceptual state we can discover. And craving. So attachment or craving, grasping, if they're too much, it's not good. But when we look at the positive aspect, what we call discernment, there's so many clearly defined, this is that, I need that, I don't need that, this look for that. So many discerning in that. And the pride, there's a negative aspect, I'm best, they are not good, but a positive, there's a confidence also. There's contentment also. Jealousy, too much, become so much stress, and then it may become a negative impact for your friends, family, but there's a lot of power in that, what we call accomplishment. And aversion, anger or hatred, too much, negative, but inside there, vividness, clarity. So all this negative emotion has the positive aspect. If we recognize, if we know the right kind of like a technique to work with that, they transform. So the same as another way, panic attacks. So panic attacks, normally thinking about the future, right? In a way, there's a lot of vividness, clarity. Normally panic comes with aversion, what we call aversion. No, I don't like. So aversion has a clarity, vividness, vigilant. Actually, there's a compassion also. Panic actually want to protect yourself from the dangers, from the problems, from the obstacles. So a lot of good things within these kleshas that if we know how to work with it, how to transform in it, then poison become medicine. So this is like Mahmoud style.
Thank you, Rinpoche. I think this new perspective is such an inspiring shift in terms of the way we normally see ourselves. So the invitation here is to think about your own life. You might not have anxiety, you might not be depressed, but you probably have something, right? We all have our own emotional habits. We all know what happens when things get out of balance in our lives. So it might be different. We might have a different flavor of emotional experience, but we've all experienced that to some degree. And when we do, we either get caught up in it or we try to turn it off. We try to distract ourselves. We try to avoid it. This is a very different approach. So the question you can ask yourself, excuse me, is what is the beauty of my particular emotional experience? The inner demons that I normally try to run from, where is the richness in that? What are the positive qualities? Not to ignore the stuff that happens when it gets toxic, but as Rinpoche was showing us, where can we find that the wisdom, the compassion, these positive qualities? So for me, I experienced a ton of anxiety earlier in my life. And when I learned to look at it in this way, I started seeing there's actually tremendous care in anxiety. There's tremendous insight. There's this capacity to be imagining the future. And there's all these amazing things. It's just that I couldn't see it when my mind contracted into the experience. So that again is the encouragement here is just to begin asking these questions. And from there, we can start to look and discover things that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. So Richie, you've been studying this stuff. In fact, a lot of us know you as one of the founders and the pioneers who started this whole field of contemplative neuroscience and studying meditation and other contemplative practices. But you were actually a pioneer in what's known as affective neuroscience, the neuroscience of emotions, long before that. So you've been studying this kind of thing for decades and decades. I wonder what you might say from a scientific perspective on everything we're discussing here.
Yeah, so thank you so much. There's quite a bit to say. We can start with what scientific research has contributed about the sources of these negative emotions and how do they arise, why do they arise. And one of the primary um, causes is our distorted conceptions of ourselves. We all have a narrative about ourselves. And there are times when this narrative, our expectations and our beliefs about ourselves, take on a certain kind of distortion. So for example, we often have this experience of permanence, where we have the conviction that whatever feelings we're having at the moment, they're gonna stay. We also have this experience of singularity. And singularity means that these emotions are who I am. So when we use, and this is reflected even in our language. So we might use a phrase that, for example, says, I am anxious. And what does that actually mean when we say I am anxious? Does that mean all of me is anxious? Every cell in my body, every part of my brain? Is there any part of me that's not anxious? But that kind of singularity, where we think it's all that is part of this distortion. And finally, the last element here is independence. We think that this is happening to me, and we become very isolated and think that this is unique to me, not recognizing that this is actually something shared widely. And so these are distortions that occur, and this self narrative that we all carry around, that is the root of many of these challenges and this kind of emotional imbalance that we all experience at one point or another, is carried in a network in the brain that we call the default network. This is a network that we revert to when we're not doing any other active things with our mind. And so the default network is the network that is called the default network because it's the network that predominates during all of the periods in our lives where we're not actively thinking or we're not actively reading. But if we are reading and we get distracted because of something happening in our mind, a thought, an emotion, it's because of the default mode. And one of the ways in which the default mode gets hijacked is it gets intimately connected to another network in the brain that we call the salience network. The salience network labels things that are important to us. We've talked about that in other seminars in this series, other webinars in this series. And the salience network is a network that includes some of the key emotional regions in the brain, one of which is the amygdala. And many of you have probably heard about the amygdala. The amygdala is involved in anxiety, in depression, in our detection of threats, but it also is more generally involved in labeling things that are important to us. And it's not just about fear. The Dalai Lama once said to us in a conversation that if the amygdala really was the part of the brain that got in the way of compassion, he would happily volunteer for brain surgery to have it removed. But the amygdala actually is something important, and it's important that we experience these emotions that may be emotions like sadness or fear or even anger at times. And we can, in the perspective that Rinpoche described, we can appreciate the wisdom that is actually underlying those emotions. And one really amazing insight from the scientific literature is that people who have larger amygdalas actually end up being people who have unusual generosity and altruism. So there's a famous series of studies that have been done on individuals who have been labeled extreme altruists. And the way this is defined is that these are people who have donated a kidney to an unrelated person. And it turns out that these people who've donated a kidney to an unrelated person actually have larger amygdala. And they have larger amygdala probably because they're able to sense other people's suffering. And they have translated that into this compassionate action. So this is a way in which we can harness these negative emotions and actually see the wisdom in them and turn them into love and compassion.
So you could see from all this, everything we're hearing from Richie, everything we're hearing from Rinpoche, that the problem is not us. The problem is not even necessarily the world. It's simply that our inner resources, our biology, you could even say, is not built to handle the kinds of inputs and stimulation that it is currently surrounded by. In the last session, we were talking all about distraction and the training of attention, and we gave this image of being in a boat on a stormy sea and suddenly realizing that you can use the rudder and that we can train our attention to function hopefully in a more effective way. So the image that we thought captures what's going on now is the electric circuit breaker in a house. If you imagine you had a house that was built 50 years ago or 75 years ago, it was a much simpler time. The kinds of inputs that you would have to the electrical system in the house were much, much simpler. You maybe had a refrigerator, maybe you didn't even have that. You'd have a few little things you plug into the sockets, but it was very, very simple. And imagine fast forwarding to the current age, and imagine you have that same circuit box in your house, but in this 21st century where you have so many things, so many devices, computers, all sorts of appliances. Maybe you're even charging your car at home now. There's all of these things. And the circuit breaker just is not simply, it's simply not designed to handle all of that. It was designed for a different time and a different place. This is like our mind, our brain, and our body, our nervous systems, you could even say. We have too much input We have the 24/7 news cycle. We have social media. We have work demands and family demands that are just constant and never let up. At the same time, we don't have time to process that. We have very little time in our day for being. We talked about that in the last session. Being is like a foreign language that most of us haven't even learned. We don't even have any space where we're simply existing. We're constantly filling our lives with more information. And so what happens is like a circuit breaker, it just breaks down, it shuts down. And that's what it feels like when our emotions tend to crop up. So what we're doing here is we're upgrading our electrical system. We're upgrading the circuit box so it can handle all of this input. We're not going to change the world, or hopefully we can change it a little bit, but we need to work, we need to learn to live in the world we're in, but we can do it in a more skillful, more balanced way. So we're going to shift gears into the practical side of this. What are the strategies we can use to work with all of this emotional turmoil, emotional imbalance when it happens? So you might remember that we have these three methods, and we're going to go through these one by one and see how we can apply that to the intense emotions that we all experience. So Richie, maybe I'll turn it back to you. If you could just give us a summary. We've covered this in the previous sessions, but maybe just as a reminder about these three sessions, and then we'll move into the first one and hear from Rinpoche again.
Yeah, so thanks, Court. These three methods. And the first method we call replace or remove and replace, where we're removing the source of the challenge and maybe replace it with something else. The second is transform, where we're transforming the emotions. And the third is transcend, where we're not transforming the emotions, but we're actually able to see the innate wisdom, the innate compassion in whatever the negative emotion might be. And one way to think about what something that's common to all of these is that when we have these challenging negative emotions, the aperture of our awareness contracts. And this actually literally occurs. We know from neuroscientific research that the field of perception literally gets more narrow when we have these disturbing emotions. And all of the strategies that we're talking about have as one of their benefits the opening of this aperture, so that harnessing the innate capacity of our awareness, we can utilize one of these strategies to help us become more emotionally balanced.
So Rinpoche, why don't we hear a little bit about the classical, the more traditional view of this from the Buddhist tradition, because there's so much nuanced thinking about this idea of the klesha. So the theme that we're discussing and across all of these sessions is the idea of a klesha, a toxic mental or emotional state. That's kind of what klesha means. You've talked about some of the more traditional examples, but we can think of things like distraction or emotional imbalance. So if we talk about removing, which is the first of these three strategies, what does the tradition have to say? Like what do we actually do? What is the approach or the method we would apply?
So in the traditional practice, removing one thing is related with the environment and your own action. So like if you really want to steal something, then don't go the things that nobody watch because then you really want to steal, So remove to going to that side, you change to different places, what we call. Or if you are really constantly angry with somebody, then don't go near that person too much. So what we call manage with the environment, manage with the situation, manage with your time, your behavior. So that's the one strategy, removal. So traditional example is the very funny example. When the pig going to come to the farm, like vegetable farm, so first pig, you smell, through the boundary. Then if you hit a small stick on the nose, the first time the pig entered that farm, Then we said pig never come back to that farm again. So it's kind of like removing from the behavioral level, environment level, something like that. So of course, especially at the beginning, these things are really helps. But that is not the only way. So then later we can transform, we can transcend. So we need to have many things that which one suitable for us and which time, which situation, which location. So these are what I'm discussing with the behave, environment, time. Then from the meditation, from your inner work, there are also different way for removal practice. For example, if you have anger, hatred, aversion, then what we call practice loving kindness and compassion. So hatred and loving kindness, compassion are opposite. So you replace by loving kindness, replace the anger and hatred by loving kindness, compassion. Or if you have craving, too much expectation and attachment, then what we call practice renunciation, detachment, impermanent. Or if you are confused and if you are really doubt, then what we call learn, study, and special use the analytical meditation to analyze that, to free from that the doubt and ignorance. And if you have proud ego, then what we call practice the appreciation, gratitude for you and people around you, about the world, about the others. And if you have jealousy, also you can especially use other as the jealousy is competition, but you can use as example. So competition become inspiration. So these are kind of like opposite of these kleshas, and to remove and replace. And maybe I will give simple practice that what I do with my panic attacks. Of course, when my panic comes, I focus on my breathing. So I not focus in the panic at the beginning. So back to the breath. So I say removal. But there's another way to do removal is through the view. So when I had panic attacks, I thought I have heart issue because of my heart is really pain and cannot breathe, and then heart speed up very fast. So I asked my mom to check many doctors, and all the doctors say you have very good heart. And I thought bad doctor. And then in the end, I realized that it's just panic attacks, because from my father told me that actually you don't have heart problem, it's the panic attacks, anxiety. So then what I tell myself is, okay, I'm not going to die from these panic attacks. My heart is okay, my physical body is okay. It's just mental disturbance in my mind. And this panic attacks is just opinion. It's really highly concerned about me. Giving me all these messages. It's okay. I'm fine. Panic, no problem. Don't worry. I'm just exaggerating. The things will not happen. So something like that. You kind of like change, replace that panic for the different antidote. So all these are what we call the removal practice and the removal strategy of the practice.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. I've got a quick follow-up question, or actually, I don't know if it's a quick follow-up. It's a follow-up question, I'll say that. You talked about the Mahamudra view, this idea that we don't have to get rid of the experiences, the painful experiences, our inner demons, things like anxiety or panic attacks, whatever our own inner demon might be. So when we use a method like this, say, again, you're Emma, you're lying in bed, you're feeling anxious. When we use one of these more removal methods, what does that do? What does that say about this wider perspective that you introduced earlier? Is there a way where we can kind of still hold that view? I mean, how do we integrate that? Because it feels like the two are contradictory. How do we work with that?
So in the Mahamudra, first we discuss about the view. So we believe that although you are suffering, you have a lot of pleasures, but the deeper level, you are not broken. And you have still this wonderful quality. For example, awareness is beyond panic attacks. And we are experiencing awareness all the time. The problem is we are not recognized. And there's innate love and compassion together with the panic attacks. And of course, there's a wisdom, the luminous aspect of the mind, like sky. And the panic attacks is like cloud. So, having saying that, at the beginning, these views are not so strong. We cannot totally bring into our own experience yet. So, to support from that, then we can use so many different things. Though your mind not totally believe only this way the solution, but enhance to stepping stone for the transformation and the transcend, we use removal. So if you are Emma, maybe too much information, then you might need to restrict some, maybe smartphone, don't bring to your bedroom. Don't watch too much about the 24 cycle of newspaper. Do some physical exercise. Go to the nature. Eat healthy food. So many of these things that we can do with the removal practice.
Okay, that's so helpful. So we can kind of have this wider view and this very inspiring perspective, and then we can be very practical in the moment. Right now, I still have this view, and I know that's what I'm working towards. But right now, I just need a little space. I need to step back, or I need to kind of shift the mental state so I can move towards that wider view. Does that capture it?
Yes, correct. So traditional, what we call the view, fearless. Action, fine as flower, like a barley flower, but the view, free as open sky. So we need these two together.
That's beautiful. So I remember when we were together in the outskirts of the Kathmandu Valley, we were holed up in a hotel kind of off in the forest in Kathmandu. And I remember when we were talking about this very topic, and I remember we were all really excited. The three of us were really excited thinking about these three methods as a lens into not only formal traditional Buddhist practice, but even looking at the kind of things that we are all used to in the modern world, and even just our normal coping strategies. And we could see that, this particular method fits well as a removal method, and so on. So I remember specifically we talked about some of the unhealthy coping mechanisms and some of the more common things we find in the world that really fit within this remove and replace kind of strategy. And Richie, maybe you could share a little bit about some of the things that we've talked about and that you've seen in your own work as a researcher.
Yeah, so the removal strategies are very wide-ranging, and there's a lot of scientific research on this, and some of them are strategies that we happen upon that may not be very effective, like trying to avoid, for example, certain kinds of input. And in today's world, that just may not be possible. We're just constantly bombarded by input. And so one of the strategies that many of us, I think, naturally find ourselves doing at times is simply to leave a situation or get up and do some movement, to do some physical exercise. And so that would be a way of sort of removing ourselves, but replacing it with an activity that may be helpful in the moment, give us some sense of bodily relaxation. And there's actually scientific research on on progressive relaxation, where we begin with tensing our bodies and then relaxing those parts of the body in a way that is of a very well-studied form of removal and replacement, removing the anxiety and replacing it with a form of relaxation. One of the most innovative techniques of removal and replacement is very modern, and it's based on neuroscientific theories of memory. And according to modern neuroscience, when some negative event happens to us, and maybe a traumatic event, and we have an emotional memory of that event, what happens is that when we retrieve that memory, uh, we reconsolidate it. And so what that means is when the memory becomes conscious, we're aware of something that happened in the past, we then reconsolidate the memory and re-encode it. And so the memories continuously change over time. They're not the actual kind of veridical, it's not like a photograph of what happened. It's not a perfect replication, but rather it's a reconstruction. And when we retrieve the memory, it renders the memory into a state where it's modifiable. We say it's vulnerable. And neuroscientists actually say that at that moment, the memory can literally be deleted, like you would delete a file from a computer. And so there's a therapeutic technique which has been developed based on these neuroscientific findings called reconsolidation therapy, where participants recall these difficult memories. They're in this vulnerable state where they can be reconsolidated in a different way. And the therapist works with the client to encourage them to reconsolidate it in a way which is more positive, less anxious. And so this is a strategy that literally is one that is based on removal and replacement. There's not that much research that's been done on this, but the research that has been done, particularly with people that have been subjected to trauma in the past, is very encouraging. And this is one of the few strategies in modern psychology that actually is based on knowledge of the brain. And so I think we'll see more of this in the future. And this is one technique that is available.
Thank you, Richie. Such cool work. And yeah, it's amazing how some of these ancient principles are now being researched in the modern world. One of the ones that we at the Center for Healthy Minds have been looking at quite a bit is appreciation as another very simple strategy. And actually, you can see that people doing this spontaneously. The fact that people watch cat videos endlessly on YouTube, or actually, we found in our research that watching the most surefire way to generate a positive emotional state is to see a baby laughing. So if you just, and you can see all sorts of videos on YouTube that have tens of millions of views where people are just watching a baby laughing hysterically, and you can't help but feel that. So you can practice this in a very intentional way. You can harness that same circuitry in the brain, the same qualities of the mind by making appreciation a practice. And it's so simple. Like right now, you can do this on the spot. All it is just noticing something positive. Like I'm looking at Richie and Rinpoche are on my screen right now. So I can just think to myself, here's two people that have devoted their lives to helping others to suffer less, that are devoting their lives to making the world a better place. And just, it's that simple thing. I just noticed something that's very true about two people. I could just as easily look around my room and notice a nice image or even just a color or something that just feels positive and pleasant to me. It's just reorienting your mind to something positive. So one very simple way you could do this in the flow of your everyday is when you notice yourself getting stressed out, just practice appreciation. So you can notice, bring somebody to mind who maybe it could be a friend, a parent, a child, a loved one, and just notice something positive. And even better, send them a message. Or if they're in your immediate environment, go out and just express appreciation. So I guarantee if you do that, whatever stress you might be feeling, it's going to be replaced or at least diminished, and it'll be what you will experience is that burst of appreciation and gratitude. So again, that can just take a moment. It only takes a moment to do. So that's the first of these three methods, which is remove. We're now going to move on to the second, which is transform. And again, Rinpoche, I wonder if we could start with the Buddhist perspective. What were you taught about this second method, and how can we apply it to challenging emotions?
Yeah, so the second method is normally transform. So how to transform normally, of course, there's many different techniques, way to transform, but normally I focus on the three things: transform into awareness, transform into love and compassion, transform into the wisdom. So, for example, when I have panic attacks, so how I can transform panic into awareness, we just did the practice, the beginning of the session. So you just to be aware of the panic attacks, then the panic become support for awareness. So within the panic, there's awareness, you're observing awareness. So what we call the cloud is in the sky, and the cloud, within the cloud, there's sky space, above there's sky space, inside. So cloud cannot go beyond sky or space. So normally what happens when we try to suppress, when we try to fight, when we try to ignore the panic attacks, then become strong, then become so solid. But now when you observe, you are out of panic attacks, but still panic attacks there, because you're observing. When you see the river, you're out of river, yet awareness is with the panic attacks, and the panic attacks become support for awareness. And not only that, you will discover there's also within the awareness within the panic attacks. So there's one technique. Another technique is with the loving kindness, compassion. So of course, normally when we have panic attacks, all these things, we think only me are suffering here. When we look around, everybody else looks like laughing, and they post wonderful picture in the social media, very happy. Only I'm suffering. So now what we have to do is, actually everybody has suffering, different way to suffer. When you discuss with your friend, when you share your suffering, and you tell your friend that I have this problem, and this is the biggest problem in the world, your friend say, no, this is not the big problem. It's okay. Your problem is very small. And normally we think, oh, he don't understand me. She don't understand me. I have the biggest problem in the world, but he or she don't understand. And then you wait a little bit, few seconds. Then maybe he or your friend, he or she talking about their problem, and then slowly they will say they have the biggest problem in the world. But for you, whoa, it's not the big problem. So slowly you try to understand, not only with you, everybody has problem, different kind of sufferings, panic. Many people experience panic attacks. So you develop empathy, sympathy based on your panic attacks, and understand they all have this panic attack. Everybody has suffering, and many people has panic attacks. So then what we call develop compassion, that you wish that may he or she free from that panic attacks. May he or she have peace and happiness. Then finally, the third step, what we call taking and sending practice. So now this is the special ancient practice involving with the imagination. The power of imagination is very strong. So what we do is we breathe in, imagining that the others' panic attacks dissolve into my own panic attacks. And then wish that may he or she free from panic attacks by breathing out. So when you're breathing out, wish they are free from panic attacks. When you breathe in, taking others' panic attacks into your panic attacks. So when we do that, of course, it's not so easy, especially at the beginning, we feel like, I want to remove. But if you try this, actually, you will get really courage and mind become more strong. There's a develop will. So then panic itself becomes what we call loving kindness and compassion practice. The panic feeling itself becomes loving kindness, compassion. So poison become medicine. So that's the one thing. And then of course we can transform into wisdom. So maybe we can discuss this another time. So these are how the ancient practice, they're transforming these glaciers into the positive aspect.
Rinpoche, I wonder if you don't mind my asking, there's an example you often give that I always find so helpful. And it really, so it gets at this, the view that we often have that the suffering we experience is due to the thing we don't like, to whatever the we perceive to be the problem. And so we think intuitively that the only solution is just to get rid of that thing, and then we'll feel okay. And you give this example of the gym as sort of an example of it actually is so much on our perspective that our perspective can radically transform something. I wonder if you could just share that example. I found it really helpful and just kind of shows the logic of transformation of like why this can work so effectively.
Yeah. So if we think I'm the only having panic attacks, then I need to win, but I'm having this panic attacks, then panic become very strong. But if we think about others, and even our own panic is represents for others, then we become very strong and brave. Then loving kindness, compassion comes. Then you don't see panic as negative up to a certain level. Like I have all the systems of panic attacks, but I'm quite exciting deeper level, It's kind of like not totally happiness, but enjoy the symptoms. It doesn't bother me. So normally I give example about like people who really, really want to do exercise. Doctors say you should do exercise, and you also become the member of expensive club gym, and you think I want to do exercise, I want to do exercise. Then what happened? One day you go to the gym, So what you do is you try to fight parking space. You want to park your car next to the door of the gym, but some days you cannot find space, so you have to park your car far away. Then what happened? Each step is suffering. So you have to walk, and you say, oh, bad day today. Somebody took my space. No good. So bad day. This person took my space. So each step is suffering. So you complain. Then you come to the gym. Then what do? You go on the treadmill. Now you're walking. So now you feel each step is happiness. Oh, good for my heart. I'm going to fit, become more handsome and beautiful, more healthy, develop immune system. So what happened? Walking outside of gym is suffering, but walking in the gym is happiness. Why? Because of our perspective. So when we know how to transform our own perspective, even the suffering become cause of happiness.
Such a great story. Thank you, Rinpoche. Richie, what does this bring up for you with the research?
Yeah, so much. And we'll talk a little bit later, I think, about how changing perspective can really be so helpful. But first, let me just say a little bit about transform. There's so much research on transformation in the way we're using it today. And we often use the phrase cognitive reappraisal to talk about the way in which we can, through our mind, transform our emotions. And many of the examples Rinpoche gave are examples that are actually being tested now in modern research, where we can transform the way we think about the causes of our negative emotions. So rather than thinking that it's all of me that's experiencing anxiety, we can loosen the grip that may have. We can recognize that we're not the only one in the world that experiences anxiety, and so forth. And going through that kind of process actually changes the brain. And one of the key findings in modern scientific research is that the connection between the prefrontal cortex, which guides our behavior, and the amygdala, which is a key brain region in the salience network, that connection is strengthened when we engage in practices to transform our emotions. And it's through that connection that we can modulate our response to challenging emotions. And one of the things that we often talk about is the 3 R's: reactivity, recovery, and resilience. Reactivity is about the initial response that we have to a challenging situation, how we react to it. Recovery is about how long it takes for us to come back down to baseline. And resilience is what we say is the product of rapid recovery. So people who recover rapidly, who come back down to baseline quickly, are people that we would say are more resilient. And resilience is, at least in part, a reflection of this connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So the stronger that connection through these practices that can transform our emotions, the faster the recovery and the more resilient we are. But one of the key things is that that doesn't necessarily affect our reactivity. At times, it's important to react, including to be strongly reactive. And one of the blessings in my life has been the opportunity to be around people like Mingyur Rinpoche and like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And one of the things that I've noticed is the extraordinary dynamic range of emotion that these people have. They can go from very strong positive emotion to negative emotion, but what's key is the fluidity between those emotions, and not having them persist beyond the point where they're actually serving a useful function. And this is a product of these strategies to transform our emotions. So when we transform our emotions, it's not about suppressing them, but rather it's about exhibiting them, allowing them to be free in a context appropriate way.
That point, Richie, we've talked a lot about this over the years, and it's such a helpful one to emphasize because I think intuitively we all have categories in our mind, and we have this in science too, as though there are inherently positive and negative emotions. And what you just said, I think, is a much more helpful way to look at it, which is it's all about the context. One emotion might be very healthy and constructive in a certain context, but you take it into a different context and it could become toxic. Or it simply stretches out too long. We have an emotional response and it's very normal and natural in a particular context, but then we're lying in bed that night and we're still feeling that response. Or 2 weeks later, we're having the memory and again, we're in that same emotional response. It's not having the same natural effect that it would have in the original context. So it's not as though any emotion is bad or negative and other emotions are inherently positive. It's just like if your friend is grieving, you wouldn't want to have, it wouldn't be a quote unquote positive, healthy experience to be joyful, right? Like you want to be empathetic and to be a good listener and to kind of resonate with what they're feeling. So I think that last point is a really helpful one. So we're going to shift gears and talk about the third of these states. And I just want to distinguish before we move on, hopefully with some clarity, the difference between the first two that we already covered. With remove, the first of these strategies, the end result is that you're not experiencing the emotion anymore. So say you're really stressed out in the middle of the day and you're just totally overwhelmed with work and you just feel defeated by, all the stuff you have going on. And then you practice appreciation like we talked about earlier. You notice that emotion and then you decide to say, okay, I can see I'm just getting caught in a toxic loop. I'm going to shift gears here. And so you think of somebody in your life who you naturally have a warm, caring connection with. Maybe you send them a note or have a brief exchange with them. And then suddenly your mind is filled with appreciation and connection. And that feeling of stress is gone. Like you effectively have removed what felt like the unpleasant emotional state, and you've replaced it with something that feels more positive and nourishing. In the second approach that we just discussed, transforming, you don't need to change it. So the end result is not that feeling of stress is gone necessarily, but your relationship to it has dramatically changed. And as Rinpoche said, there's many ways you can do that. You could do it with awareness. You could simply notice how you're feeling. I used to do this a ton when I would experience anxiety, for example. I would just bring awareness into my body and feel what I was feeling. So that changes the relationship to it. The point is not to get rid of it. The end result of transformation is not that the anxiety, in my case, goes away, or the stress or the anger, whatever it might be, but yet you can relate to it through the lens of compassion or through the lens of awareness or wisdom or what have you. The third, which we're going to discuss now, is to transcend. It's connecting with some element that usually we are blind to or not attuned to. So Rinpoche, again, why don't we turn it back to you? When it comes to strong emotions, what does it mean to transcend the experience? What is that all about?
So the transcend meaning is getting really close to our true nature. So the sky, the inner sky. So normally our innate qualities we are total blind. What we call is very close to you, but you cannot see it. As I mentioned the other time, putting your glass on top of your head and looking for the glass. So sometimes what we call too close, not easy to see. Too easy, not easy to believe. So the traditional example is bird flying in the sky without noticing sky, fish swimming in the river without noticing water. So how to practice this? The main practice is what we call knowing as they are, or recognizing as they are. So maybe I give one example that, so let's say with the loving kindness, compassion. So what we call all the kleshas, all the emotion, the essence, the deeper level, it infused with love and compassion. So of course, we don't believe that, right? First time when I hear this from my father, I thought, I'm having this hard time, panic attacks. And he is saying that I have this love and compassion with me all the time. So I never believed at the beginning. But of course, he not just saying that you have this, but he taught me step-by-step practice, how to discover, how to recognize this within ourselves. Okay, so now maybe I would like to introduce what we call this innate love and compassion. So maybe first I would like to ask you a question. How many of you want me to introduce this innate love and compassion? Yes, raise your hand. I hope you're raising hand in front of screen. Okay, thank you. How many of you don't want me to introduce this innate love and compassion? Raise your hand. Okay, so now the introduction is finished. Do you understand? So you might have question. What, So what I mean is the love and compassion is feeling, or it is motivation. And this motivation resides every essence of every thought, every emotion, every movement, every eyes blink. Why? All of you come here. Why? Looking for happiness. So wanting to be happy is love. Don't want to suffer. Don't want to have problem, obstacle. Is compassion. And that is always with us. So while you're watching this video right now, maybe some of you are watching like this way. If you sit this too long, uncomfortable, right? Or maybe this way is better. Oh, a little bit happy. But it's too long like this, maybe difficult. Maybe this way. Maybe this way. So each movement is looking for happiness, wanting to free from suffering. Each eyes blink. If you don't blink your eyes, become problem, right? Happiness. Each blink. And what we call even unconscious level, each breathing is looking for some form of happiness to avoid suffering problem. So not only with the body, each thought, each emotion, fundamental level, looking for happiness, don't want to suffer. And this feeling of looking for happiness, don't want to suffer, is also what we call the sign of our inner goodness. Because our true nature is free from suffering, it has lasting happiness that calling us, come home. But we lost most of the time, right? We lost with the glaciers, ignorance, aversion, craving. So we don't see these true nature. So now how to find this? Normally we just first relax, let our mind be as it is, then just go to the deep into the emotion itself. So when I go into the panic attacks, deeper level, I just want to feel free. I don't want to have problem. I don't want to have obstacle, the dangers, the strangers. I have a lot of fear about the strangers, lightning in the sky. So all these are just wanting to free from problem and to have happiness. And when you look at the deeper, after a certain level, it's just feeling. You even lose the word, the image, the voice, all this. It's just simply feeling of longingness, feeling of wanting to be free. So when we see that within the emotion, then after a certain level, the real well-being manifests, the fundamental well-being manifests through the emotion. So that this is just small example about the transcending. So no need to remove, no need to particular change, but knowing the essence, connecting the true nature of that emotion, then it's free, then liberate ourselves.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So this approach, Richie and I both learned this after years of meditating in other traditions, and I think, I'm guessing, Richie, you would agree, this shift in perspective is maybe the most inspiring thing that really completely changed our meditation practice and beyond that, our lives. And it's also really informed the work we've done at the Center for Healthy Minds. So Richie and I have been collaborating for years, building the Healthy Minds program. And it's very much inspired and based on this very approach that Rinpoche is talking about. But we actually didn't know how this would go and how this would work out. And Richie, I know we talked before the session about some of the most recent research we're doing. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the science of this more transcend approach, which is not very yeah, it's not very typical that you find in the scientific literature these days. So what is the research showing?
Yeah. So thank you, Court. There's both very recent work that you're alluding to. There's also work that's a little bit older that we've done with Mingyur Rinpoche, actually. And I'll start there. We've done research on pain, and pain is actually a good example of this transcend approach. And in the research that we've done on pain, what we found is that when we give physical pain, in this case, it's heat, so it's very realistic and it really is painful. And when we deliver this to participants in the scanner, like Mingyur Rinpoche, it's not that the pain goes away. It's not like the pain is suppressed. The pain is still there, but there's no longer any distress. And when we look at the brain, what we see is that the parts of the brain that represent the sensory qualities of the pain actually are enhanced. They actually show larger activation compared to controls who have not done a lot of meditation. So it's as if the awareness is completely open, but tuning into the wisdom of pain. Pain actually is necessary for us to protect us, to ensure that we don't cause any bodily harm. And when we can tune into the wisdom of the pain and really see it clearly for what it is, it doesn't go away, but the distress is dramatically reduced. And so the emotional centers of the brain that are registering this distress, those are the parts of the brain that are really transformed. And in the work that Court is alluding to with our Healthy Minds program, one of the things that we took a risk in doing is developing this curriculum, which is a strength-based approach. It's a curriculum built on these innate qualities that Rinpoche is teaching us about: awareness, compassion, wisdom, and we've also included purpose in there. And building this curriculum for a strength-based approach, we didn't actually know before we did the scientific research whether we can take a purely strength-based approach where we don't deal with symptoms at all and see if it's a viable strategy for working with difficult emotions. And we've actually just completed a large project with more than 1,000 participants who had elevated levels of depression from across the United States. We actually recruited participants from every state, all 50 states, and we delivered a 28-day program where they spent 1 week on awareness, 1 week on connection or compassion, 1 week on insight or wisdom, and 1 week on purpose. And they did just a modest amount of practice, on average about 5 minutes a day. That's it. And what's remarkable is that we saw their symptoms of depression decreased and their symptoms of anxiety decreased in a magnitude that is comparable to other depression and anxiety treatments that are standard of care. And so even though we did not focus on the symptoms at all, we saw that these symptoms were dramatically reduced. And it's certainly our aspiration that people will continue to utilize these practices and skills in their everyday life way beyond this 1 month period. And so in this way, we think that these are changes that can really stick and endure over time. The other thing we saw is not just changes in their depression and their anxiety, but we saw elevations in their well-being, and we saw changes in their biology. Just from this incredibly small dose of practice, we saw reductions on measures of inflammation. We actually got blood samples from all these people. And remarkably, we saw changes in their microbiome. there are approximately 200 million neurons in our gut. Those neurons seem to be doing something, and our minds and brains are in constant bidirectional communication with the gut. And it turns out that when we cultivate these strategies of well-being using this strength-based approach, our gut also changes, and it changes in a way that results in the gut being more well sealed, if you will. So the permeability of the gut changes, and there are all kinds of problems that arise when the gut is leaky. The bacteria infiltrate into the blood system and can cause all kinds of particularly inflammatory problems. And when our guts become more well sealed, we are actually healthier. And so the strategies from this strength-based approach not only improve our well-being, but they seem to improve our biology as well.
One of the cool parts of the research that Richie just mentioned was at the early phase, before we actually launched into the big, very expensive study that we are now just concluding, we wanted to do a little proof of concept testing to make sure we weren't totally, on the wrong track. And what we did is we did what's called design research, not the formal scientific research, but we took a smaller group of people, all of whom had a clinical diagnosis of depression, and many of them with both depression and anxiety. And we just had them do the Healthy Minds program, as Richie mentioned, but we did a lot of qualitative research. We asked them to talk about their experience, not in general, but after every single practice they did, after everything they heard and learned, we would get their feedback. What did you think about this? Did you find it helpful? Did anything feel like it was unhelpful or counterproductive? And we heard over and over again that generally, after each practice, after each lesson, people reported very positively. But the one word that we heard over and over and over again was hope. And that was so inspiring and heartening to us because, as Richie said, we didn't know. We weren't in the program. We don't talk about depression and anxiety. And so we thought people might feel like, yeah, this is fine, but this isn't helping me with the challenges I actually have. But we heard just the opposite. And it's completely based in Rinpoche's teachings. So if you're interested, my guess is most of you already have either done the Healthy Minds program or studied with Mingyur Rinpoche and done his teachings. But you can download the Healthy Minds app in either of the app stores. But I would especially recommend, if you want a deeper dive, Rinpoche's Joy of Living program, which in many ways is the basis for what we did with Healthy Minds, the Healthy Minds program. The Joy of Living program offers a step-by-step meditation training, which is really extraordinary. Both Richie and I have done it many, many times over, and just profoundly helpful. Very much has inspired our work. So we've heard a lot of different methods. We've gone from the remove to transform and transcend. Really the most important thing, and actually there's even some research coming out now that's starting to support this, is actually the view. It's the perspective. The techniques we use, sending in a text of appreciation or taking a moment to just tune into what's going on in your mind and body, as Rinpoche taught earlier, all of these are incredibly helpful. But the biggest shift is actually the shift in perspective. It's this moving into a new paradigm where we're not endlessly trying to fix ourselves, to change ourselves, and orienting to our flaws and shortcomings. It's really orienting to all of the richness that is already here. So I wonder if we could close out the session before we get into some Q&A of just talking about the kind of going back to the ultimate view, this idea of recognizing the very essence of who we are and using our emotional states as a gateway into that. And we can just close out on hopefully a positive, hopeful view about human nature and how it applies to emotion. So Rinpoche, anything you want to share from the tradition before we go into some Q&A?
Yeah, so traditional example is so sky and the cloud. So normally actually change the cloud because sky is always free, always beyond. Even the worst pollution comes, that pollution cannot change the nature of sky. or the tornado or hurricane, the biggest storm comes in the sky, it doesn't change the nature of sky. So we have this inner sky, which is combination of awareness, innate love and compassion, and the wisdom. Always there. What we call 24 hours, even while we are sleeping. Of course, it's difficult to believe and to recognize that, but it's there within us. So, but then when we, as Cortland mentioned, the perspective, the view is very important. The view is to getting in touch to our innate quality, but to support by using different means of techniques, removal, transformation, and the end is transcend, of course, to connect with to nature. Then what happened? Slowly, then we have become very free, very open, and it will really help us to flourish by love, compassion, wisdom. That manifestation become stronger. Even these clashes, what we call, so traditional example is there's the rope, like you tied with the bags by rope made by grass. So is the grass name is drema in the Tibetan language, drema grass, and there's some technique you dry and then put under the sun, then you try to squeeze, then in the end become rope. So when we put two ropes, one burned by fire, totally burned by fire, one is the real rope which is not burned yet, but then when you look at, very similar, the shape, the color is similar, but actually one is ash, because burned by fire you cannot tie it. Another is real. So when we really recognize the nature of all this suffering, clashes, all these things, then they are still there. We don't need to get rid of them, but they all automatically transform into awareness, love and compassion, and the wisdom. So I thought another example, that one time I went to the national park. So there's pet-sized wood, because of the volcano eruption in the ancient time. Then now the wood become like rock. So what do you call pet-sized, right?
Petrified.
Petrified. Thank you.
Petrified.
So petrifying wood. So I touched that. First I thought, wow, huge wood, and I touched. Actually, it's stone. It's not the wood, but look like exactly like wood. So it transformed from inside. So that's the Mahamudra style, that in the end, everything transformed into support for freedom, like joy and happiness.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. So we've got a ton of great questions. And I just want to make a note about this email list that we've put out here many times. There are way more questions than we're going to get to, and we're so grateful that so many of you have shared all these wonderful questions. What we're planning to do is to actually answer these in other ways. So we'll get to some of them today. But one of the reasons we're creating this email list is we want to stay in touch. And one of the ways we were planning to do it is to have short answers to these questions that we can kind of put out to you on a more kind of rolling basis beyond these sessions. So as Dinara mentioned earlier, if you want to sign up, many of you have already signed up. You don't need to do it twice, but if you want to sign up to stay in touch with us as we work on the book and have other news that for all the different things we're working on, you're welcome to do that. Of course, if that's not of interest, no problem. But just to say, if we don't get to your questions, we're still going to use them. And it's very, very helpful for us to hear what's on your mind. So let's dive into some of these questions. This first one is very much for you, Richie. I know you'll have something to say about this. One of the listeners writes, I work with teenagers. How can teens be supported, particularly with the amount of stress that they are under? How do their brains differ from adult brains?
Yeah, so thank you. And I had two teenagers at one point in my life, and one of them gave us a run for our money, and it was a very challenging time. So I've had a lot of personal experience with this. And I can say things have ended up on the other side really beautifully, but it was a rocky few years. So, and my practice, I should say, was incredibly important to me during the challenging period of my son's adolescence. I think that there are a couple of things to say. One is that there are three major periods of sensitive development in our brains in the early years of life. The first occurs right around birth. The second occurs between the ages of roughly 5 and 7 years when we first begin school. And the third is during adolescence. And these are times when our brain is especially susceptible to modification, to influence. And so if the influence that an adolescent is getting is from social media, from video games, from and some of which could be positive, but not all, then one result may occur. And other kinds of influences can be potentially very positive. And so I actually remember at a retreat that Mingyur Rinpoche's brother offered when Mingyur Rinpoche was on his 4.5 year wandering retreat. And his brother, Sokni Rinpoche, was asked the question, what can we do as parents to help our children? And one of the things that Sokni Rinpoche said, which I will never forget, is, and this was in this case referring to young children, but he said, put the child on your lap, have the child facing the outer world, and simply rest and love. And so through your calm, resting awareness and through your love and compassion, you will be communicating that. You will be teaching your child through nonverbal means, we would say as scientists. And what I found as a parent when particularly my son was going through adolescence is to simply do the practice ourselves and try to tune into our innate nature of awareness, love, and compassion, and wisdom. And if we are embodying those qualities, people in our social network will inevitably feel them. They will benefit from them. And when we sit down to practice, we always invoke the intention that we're practicing not just for ourselves, but we're practicing for the benefit of others. And so this is a really wonderful opportunity to put that into practice.
Thank you, Richie. So another great question. I think this would be a good one for you, Rinpoche. One of our listeners writes, in relationships with others, what is the best way to manage a sudden, strong emotion in the moment? The feeling seems so overwhelming. I appreciate the thoughtful guidance now, but a sudden, strong emotion like panic for me takes me by surprise.
So, of course, sometimes very strong emotion comes, we become out of control and we forget the awareness. So all this are happen. But nevertheless, normally we need to some kind of like preparation that catching this emotion, what we call catching. Catching meaning you don't need to fight with emotion, get rid of emotion. While we are saying that don't fight, because fighting normally doesn't help. For example, If you tell yourself, don't think about pizza, don't think about pizza, what happened? You think about pizza. So same thing for me, when I say no panic, panic becomes stronger. And then fear of panic comes. And the fear of panic is stronger than panic attacks. So similarly, just tell yourself, okay, maybe sometimes it's difficult, sometimes become out of control. But what I'm going to do is just catch that feeling, catch the sensation. Maybe tight here, or shaking your hands, sweating, or the image. Just catch for a few seconds only when the sudden emotion comes. You just almost hold it, feel it that. Even that few seconds normally really helps. And once that become habit, then after a certain level, that catching the emotion gives you great freedom slowly. Remember, when you see the river, you're out of river. Not only that, you see the panic become pieces. Sensation, image, voice, belief, at least 4 pieces. And you see they are changing. So the singularity, permanent, independent dissolves. Because when you see, it's no longer you're watching, somebody else is watching. So no singularity. When you see the pieces, it's not singularity, it's soft, it's not solid. And they're changing, so it's not permanent, panic up and down. And in the end, what happened is, eventually panic becomes support for meditation. But of course, it takes some time. For me, it took me 5 years of effort. It's not so easy, but still there's hope.
Rinpoche, follow up on that. I wonder if you could mention 0% meditation or 0%, like the importance of intention. That to me has been such a helpful idea because it's so, especially when we forget or we get caught up in an emotion or we lose it, it's easy to, get negative, feel like we failed or we're not doing it right. I wonder if you could just share that perspective also.
Yes. So we have this saying in the tradition, 0% compassion, 0% awareness, 0% wisdom. The meaning is, it's just intention. Like example, if you want to practice awareness, I lost. That's good enough. You don't need to even put the attention of awareness. What we call knowing that you're lost, it is coming back. When you know you're lost, you're not lost. So don't hold the meditation, no need to hold, but something like intention, then you know you're lost. So that's the awareness. With the compassion, what we call, I want to practice compassion. Just that wish to practice compassion is practice, is compassion. Why? Because you want to develop compassion for you, for others, good for everybody, well-being for everybody. Plenty of love and compassion is there, just in that intention. Though the quality may be not good, though you don't feel compassion, but just intention, I want to practice compassion. That intention, though you don't feel zero compassion, but a lot of love and compassion there. So something like these things, it's just try. Don't care about the quality, so let go, but don't give up. Try again.
Thank you so much. So this one, I think we'll probably all have something to say about, but maybe Richie, we could start with you. One of the viewers writes, Western culture emphasizes control, fixing, goal setting, and a focus on outcomes. How can we navigate within this culture and function successfully in work and personal environments as we patiently engage in practicing these strategies and acquiring these skills?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and there are many different ways to respond, and I'm sure, yes, we'll all have something to say. We often say with these practices that we're switching from a mode of doing to a mode of being. And in this culture, with so much emphasis, as the person who asked the question says, on measurable outcomes, it's often hard to do that. But what the scientific research shows is two things I want to mention here. One is that it doesn't take that much to get an initial taste of the benefit. And so we can, over time, step by step, develop a real inner conviction based on our own experience that these practices, that this path really is having benefit, and we can sense it internally. We don't need all these objective metrics. I'm a scientist. I do all this brain research, and the honest truth is I've never measured my own brain changes in my meditation practice. I've had a meditation practice over 50 years, and I sense in myself its benefit, and I don't need all the instruments to inform me. I think the instruments are really important for our scientific research and to show the world that there are these benefits, but we don't need an individual, her or himself doesn't really need this. The other thing is we've talked about this view that we all are really perfect to begin with. We have this innate awareness and love and compassion and wisdom. Rinpoche often uses the phrase innate goodness, and scientific research actually shows that. And one of the cool things that we did is we developed a control condition for our Healthy Minds meditation program that involves no meditation, literally no meditation, just the view. And lo and behold, it turns out that just receiving the view with not doing any meditation, zero, literally zero, has tremendous benefit. Not quite as much as both together, but it does have a lot of benefit. So bringing the view into our awareness and appreciating our innate qualities really has profound effects.
Yeah, it's funny. As I was reflecting on this question, that was exactly what I thought as well. We do a lot of organizational work. Richie and I work together at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, work with Rinpoche at Tergar, and there's all sorts of planning and there's just all sorts of stuff you need to do as part of any work environment. For me, by far, what has been the most helpful is not to feel like there's anything wrong with that. We need to kind of play the game, so to speak, and sometimes it makes sense and sometimes the game makes no sense, like whatever these systems we've set up as human beings. But to bring that wider view, as Rinpoche said earlier, I think the key is how can we hold that wider view of ourselves, of others, of the world, and at the same time be practical and working with the tools we have at our disposal. And that's not easy to bring those in kind of to bear in an integrated way. But for me, that's been so helpful, just always coming back to that hopeful view. And I wonder if we could end with that, and maybe a final question for you, Rinpoche. It's something that I think I'm hearing over and over again from people, different themes of this question, which is really how to deal with all of the uncertainty and upheaval in the world. So one of the viewers writes, I'm a psychotherapist and a social worker from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I work with several clients who experience negative emotions related to the uncertainty of the future, both for themselves and the world around them. How can I support clients in cultivating acceptance and an optimistic mindset? So I think this is very much on people's minds these days, just so many things going on in the world, and it provokes a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, so I have also a lot of projects. All three of us very similar. So I kind of like guide to Tergar meditation communities, East, West, and um, monasteries, institute, and also like social work in the deep in the Himalayas and different projects, books, and all this. And then when I work with the people, of course, normally in the Tibetan tradition, what we call 30 yak has 60 horn. Two people has two different ideas. So always has different ideas and different personalities, different opinion. So many things comes. But normally what happens is we look at the negative aspect. So if you have 10 qualities about you and about others, and one among them, one negative, 9 positive, we only look at the one negative. Then we exaggerate that negative, Then that negative become 90%. So what I do is I look at the positive aspect. So even there's a challenge, like of course, when I was young, panic attacks, but I look at it as how to learn from that. And eventually panic become my teacher, my guru, my best friend actually. And then I went to wandering retreat in 2011, the first month, almost died. But I learned a lot from that experience. So that is now I'm considered one of the best experience in my life. And after I come back from my retreat, there's huge earthquake in Nepal and lot of damage my monastery in Nepal. So first time when I come back, when I see that, I got shocked because I have lot of wonderful memory because my father was there. I received a lot of teachings and there's so many good memories with that monastery. But then I suddenly think, okay, how I can transform this? How I can use this obstacle to opportunity? Of course, I'm not saying earthquake is good. So many people lost life and a huge problem. But then how we can transform? So I try to think out of box and creative style. Now the Nepal, our monastery become center for monastic Buddhist education, international institute like these wisdoms. We have institute, Tergar Institute in Nepal, can share for everybody around the world. And we have all in one mandala practice that everybody can practice together their own way. Now we have school, Tergar school. So many things develop after the earthquake because we demolished the old one, rebuild something new. And during the COVID time, so at the beginning of COVID, we all are really scared and depressed. Then I thought, what should I do? A lot of teaching online, my own study. And because of COVID, I wrote very special book for me also about the Abhidharma, integrating with the meditation, farm with my mom, good health, develop organic vegetables. So many things that we can do that. From the obstacle, we can see how we can use that, how we can transform that. So when we look at that aspect, a lot of the time, for me, 90% of the time, obstacle become opportunity, problem becomes solution. Of course, not so easy, right? Even with the people, I see these good things within the people, and people sometimes complain, But then, after a certain level, they will discuss about the solution by themselves. So then I can connect with these solutions. You are right. Yes, I agree. That's a good idea. Let's do it. So solution is not from me, actually from them. But I know how to listen and connect with that. So for me, I can say 99% of the time, I don't have problem with the people. Of course, 1%, no matter what, it might have problem, but I'm get along. That not because I'm very smart, not because I'm very kind of like diplomatic, because of this practice, the basic, I believe in basic goodness, and I see that I connect with the people with that level. So even though now it's a dark time in the world, lot of uncertainty, but still don't give up. How to transform this obstacle as opportunity to grow, to learn for the future.
What a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much, Rinpoche, for sharing your wisdom and all the work you are doing in the world. You all would be amazed if you knew how many different organizations Rinpoche oversees. It's quite extraordinary. And similarly, Richie, so much amazing work and so many people you have helped and lives you have touched. So a big bow of gratitude on behalf of everybody watching for everything that the two of you do. Um, a note of thanks to Dinara and the great team at Tergar who has been hosting all of this. As we've mentioned a number of times, there's a sign-up list if you want to stay connected about the books we're working on and for some upcoming news. You're welcome to sign up for that. I think there's a link in the chats, both on YouTube and in Zoom. And again, thank you, all of you, for taking time. There's so many things you could be doing with your time on a Saturday, and we feel very grateful and honored that you chose to spend it with us. So we hope this was beneficial to you. And Dinara, I will turn it back to you to close out the session.
Thank you, Court, and thanks to you as well. You're one of these people who run so many organizations, and all your work is so important for us. Yes, and just a couple of announcements. Actually, the recording of this session, as well as other sessions, will be accessible on YouTube. So if you want to tell your friends to watch it, it will be possible. So please do. I think it's a very important one. And now a couple of announcements about how you can go on with Tergar if you're interested. And if you are new to meditation, or if you want to, you're not new, but you want some structured approach to meditation, you can join Joy of Living courses program designed by Mingyur Rinpoche. And we talked a lot about emotions today. So there are actually 3 levels, and each of them works with emotions as well as others. But emotions is a kind of important part of it. So on the first level of Joy of Living, we get used to be aware of emotions and be okay with them. And level 2, we transform them into loving kindness and compassion. And level 3, we see wisdom behind them and thus transforming them into wisdom. So next slide, please. Yes, so this is just one of the comments of the people who took this program. So yes, it's really great one, and you can sign up to it. And now there is a 10-day trial that you can take. The next slide, please. Yes, so one of the important things with Joy of Living is that you are supported by the community of meditators, and it's really warm, and you can anytime schedule a talk with Tergar guides. And this is the part of the program. And also you can join community circle sessions led by senior instructor Tim Olsted, and discuss all your experiences online with the fellows who are on the path. It's really a great opportunity to connect to others, and it can be very important to build the habit to meditate, because sometimes on our own we forget, we got carried away by our old habits. But this Tergar community really helps to go on, to build the healthy habits. And the next one. Yeah, so here is this free trial that I already mentioned. Start your meditation journey on joy.tergar.org. Yes, so here you can start Joy of Living program for 10 days and then go on. The next one, please. Yes, and a wonderful opportunity to take any time, anywhere meditation program with Mingyur Rinpoche on May 31st and June 1st. This is a really great program about how you can use any action, any activity in your life as meditation. So you don't need to change anything in your life to meditate. Anything you do, any moment can be a meditation. So this is the unique opportunity to actually investigate this with Mingyur Rinpoche himself. Just if you're interested in that, or if you have some friends who just are interested in meditation, that could be a great first step. But also if you're Tergar student, that's also a great opportunity to go through different types of daily meditations, how formal and informal meditation actually merge. Please also take a look at that. So thank you so much again. And the next, maybe we will introduce the next session also, which is, this is one more slide. So next Saturday, same time, it will be another session, the fourth one, rewriting the craving mind, a path to overcoming addiction and unhealthy habits. So please register, and we will meet you again with Mingyur Rinpoche, Cortland Dahl, and Richard Davidson. So again, thank you so much. Thank you to all our speakers and to everyone here and to Tergar team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you soon.
See you.